Ashok, if I could bring you in on this as well, on the national security question, where he said, the Modi way of dealing with our neighbors is to be constructive and cooperative when required, but also to be firm and steadfast when required, and to suggest that both of these stands have been demonstrated by Prime Minister Modi's leadership in dealing with either Pakistan or China, even though he didn't take their names.
So a couple of points here, Shiv. One, if you look at the approach to Pakistan and China, where in the face of challenges, this government has been fairly resolute. It has not always achieved what it wanted to, but it has never shied away from trying. Whether it is in terms of actually mobilizing over 100,000 troops to the Ladakh border to match Chinese mobilization, to improving border infrastructure with China, again, not a done deal. I'm not suggesting, unlike what Rajdeep accuses me of, that there's been a miracle. It's a gradual, steady, but determined effort to improve and match what China has done over decades. But it's a work in progress. And on Pakistan, the fact that there has been no terror attack on Indian soil or Indian asset outside, very unfortunately, Jammu and Kashmir in the past few years is certainly something this government can take a quiet pride in. But of course, I have to touch wood there and hope nothing goes wrong in the future. Second, what this government and what Mr. Modi have done is they actually the first in our country in a long time to talk about composite national power. Economic power, including capacities to build at home, to have some resilience with domestic sourcing in defense production, in key technologies, in electronics manufacture, in building leverage and not building dependencies vis-a-vis China in these key commodities and key technologies, and further modernizing the military.
Very, very
and building defense border infrastructure. So you're talking about composite national power, which the Chinese have spoken about for 2 decades. This is the first time in this government I've been hearing policymakers, ministers, senior civil servants talk about composite national power. That is the big change in terms of the approach to security.
Okay, very interesting. And this new approach
because security today is not just guns and tanks and bombers.
Oh, absolutely.
Or fighters. It's also supply chains.
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
It's also technology.
Yeah. Very, 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 very important perspective on this. Sanjay, you wanted to just add to this on this national security issue?
Yeah, 3 short points. I do believe there's been a lot of opacity on China. Number 2, on Gaza, I thought this government jumped the gun. In fact, given the fact that India had a good relationship with the Palestinians, there was an opportunity for India to actually be an effective troubleshooter. It would have been a great opportunity for India to take some kind of a leadership of the global south that was thrown away. Because I think the problem in Mr. Modi's government, largely driven by his personality, is to leverage foreign policy largely for the domestic audience. I know all political leaders see an opportunity, they try and exploit it, but I think Mr. Modi's government goes bizarrely over the top. The last point that we should not ignore, I think India and all of us believe in a law and order situation internationally and domestically. The criticism that has come of late that we are actually attacking separatists or terrorists abroad and killing them and therefore now inviting international kind of disapproval is a matter of serious concern. It is all right to display this muscular nationalism on domestic soil, but these are things that have a larger long-term ramification.
But Sanjay, India isn't displaying any muscular nationalism on this issue. It has set up a committee, in response to these questions. There has been a difference in how India has approached allegations from Canada and the United States. But surely you aren't suggesting that India should be bending over backwards when allegations which are deemed to be completely untrue are made by a foreign power, especially countries that are alleged to be, interfering with our internal affairs. But let's just leave that point aside for a moment, because that's a separate debate which we've been doing a lot of here on India today, because we're almost out of time. And I'm told by our producers we have time just for that last segment, which is where we asked the Prime Minister on a personal note. You've been in key leadership posts for over 22 years, whether as a chief minister and now as a prime minister. What would you say have been the key lessons that you have learned, the mantras of your success? It's a question that the prime minister is asked often, and the reason for that is the answer is always interesting. Here's what the Prime Minister said in response to India Today's question, and I quote, "My successes are in the public domain and so are my efforts, so people are free to deduce mantras of success. The one thing that I have adhered to is nation first. Everything I have done as a Karyakarta, as a Chief Minister and as a Prime Minister, I have always put the nation first. Every decision I have taken has been taken with the national interest in mind. Often people ask me about how I took a difficult decision. For me, it does not seem difficult as I take all my decisions through the prism of nation first." So that's the final segment of the interview that we have done with the Prime Minister. Quick final round of comments and reactions on this. Raj, to you first. Nation first is my prism, says the Prime Minister, for any and all decisions.
Shiv, let's give Mr. Modi credit for being one of the most decisive prime ministers and taking very tough decisions. We've seen that in Kashmir. We've seen him, of course, in other areas like women's reservation, pushing through a bill that had been pending for a long time. Seen that in terms of his attack, both in Uri as well as, Balakot. So he has taken the call. He has bit the bullet on many, many occasions.
Yeah.
What is interesting about this is beyond, we had also in other questions asked him about the way he takes decisions. And there I think it's a very revealing answer. He says, everyone thinks, he's been accused by the opposition of being authoritarian, centralized, the PMO takes all the calls. He gave a three-step, process where he arrives at a decision. He says, firstly, I have what he calls ground connect. He actually comes from a background of poverty. He has mingled with a lot of people, and he understands this psyche of the Indian, particularly the rural and the needy that are there. So he comes with that thing. Then secondly, he has a lot of experts come and talk to him. And, I'll tell him various points of view on that.
Okay.
And then he also points to what he called a lived reality, where he's actually seen all these things in process. And he says he puts these three things together and takes a decision. I think it's one of the few times you're seeing inside the mind of Narendra Modi and how he takes some of those toughest decisions.
Okay.
What he told us through the prism of nationalism, as well as how he operates and takes those decisions. It's very rare to see a prime minister make those kind of statements as to how he arrives at decisions.
Okay.